Welcome to the Spirit of Mayflower podcast with me, Rachel Carter. Welcome to episode 4, where I explore Boston and Harvard University. I'm joined later on by Ella and Wyn Pritchard of Highcliffe Music and special guest Meredith Vasta, collection steward at the Peabody Museum, Harvard. Thursday, the 8th of August. The flight to Boston was very full. My head hurt such a lot on the descent. I got my bag really quickly and was grilled by the border agent on the ins and outs of who was paying for my trip, the study at Harvard and the artist residency. I kept explaining, Arts Council England has paid. But who is paying your wages? Arts Council England. We went round and round for what felt like 5 minutes before he reluctantly stamped my passport and let me pass. The airport bus was free and travels on the road. Then, at the World Trade Center, it switches off the engine and attaches itself to the electricity cables overhead, then drives into the underground, under the river, and then stops in the underground station, the T. I got the T straight to Harvard. There is more than one campus, and it covers a very large area, so I stopped a passerby for directions. I found the Peabody Museum at 10:30 a.m. and spent the day with Meredith. The similarities between the macrame pieces I made on the boat and the work of the American First Nations is uncanny. I've been working on a flora and fauna pattern that is geometric in nature, referencing the working class people on board the Mayflower. Many of them worked the loom or the land. On arriving at Plymouth, they had to learn a new method of agriculture from the Wampanoag people. The First Nations also have a geometric style of representing the natural world, the spirit world above and below, and the current world. Meredith gave me a full tour and then took me for lunch on campus. The ordering system was amazing. In front of you is the menu and a girl with an iPad and a money belt. I asked what the vegan options was, and with a few taps of the iPad, the whole menu changed, showing all the vegan options. I selected the hearty veg stew with pita bread and a sugar-free iced tea. As she explained, all the soft drinks are very sugary. She takes your cash and name, and then from behind the interactive menu, someone yells from the kitchen your name with your order. I've decided to do a little sketching in the afternoon and leave the in-depth study until tomorrow once I'm feeling more awake, and headed off around 3:30 p.m. The tea was straightforward. One stop to my lodgings, which I found quite easily. A different vibe from Dartmouth. The houses are similar but much closer together and a little unkempt. The house I'm staying in is a period house carved up into apartments. There's lots of wood and decoration. My room is on the ground floor with a huge bed and air conditioning, which was quickly switched off. My shoes off and on the bed, and I was asleep so fast. Writing in his journal, William Bradford describes the day that they came across some Indian houses whose occupants had clearly left in a great hurry. Diary entry from Tuesday, November the 28th. Bradford and Edward Winslow describe what they found.
Whilst we were thus ranging and searching, 2 of the sailors, which were newly come on shore, by chance espied 2 houses which they had dwelt in, but the people were gone. The houses were made with long sapling trees, bended and both ends stuck in the ground. They were made round, like unto an arbour, and covered down to the ground with thick and well-wrought mats. And the door was not over a yard high, made of a mat to open. The chimney was a wide open hole in the top, for which they had a mat to cover it close when they pleased. One might stand and go upright in them. In the midst of them were 4 little trenches knocked into the ground, and small sticks laid over, on which they hung their pots. Round the fire they lay on mats, which are beds. The houses were double matted, for as they were matted without, so they were within, with newer and fairer mats.
I awoke at 5 p.m. and booked my boat to Provincetown, messaged Ray and researched the area for dinner options. I'm in a retro diner called Veggie Express. It's packed with families and students who have very, very loud voices. Everything on the menu can be made vegan. Amazing. I ordered a burger with salad and chips. I forgot chips are crisps here, but they're still tasty. I ordered a New York cheesecake and a decaf coffee. So delicious. Bonus, they add taxes and the tip to the bill, unlike the confusing Canadian method. Friday, the 9th of August. I slept well last night. I managed to stay awake long enough to complete a few sketches. I made my way to Harvard University this morning on the T and spent the morning in the handling rooms in the Peabody with my white lab coat on. Seeing the wampum items up close without glass in front of you was great. The detail is fantastic. There are white beads fashioned from whelk shells and purple beads made from quahog, a type of a hard-shelled clam. I made some sketches referencing quantities of beads and layouts. I shall colour them tonight using the photographs I've taken as a reference. On Friday the 16th of March 1621, the Pilgrims had their first in-person encounter with a Native American man called Samoset, whose friendly help would become invaluable to the Pilgrims in later years.
He very boldly came all alone, and along the houses straight to the rendezvous, where we intercepted him, not suffering him to go in, as undoubtedly he would, out of his boldness. He saluted us in English and bade us welcome, for he had learned some broken English among the Englishmen that came to fish at Monchegal. He was a man free in speech, so far as he could express his mind, and of a seemly carriage. He said he was not of these parts, but of Moratigon, and one of the Sagamores, or lords thereof, and had been 8 months in these parts. The wind beginning to rise a little, we cast a horseman's coat about him, for he was stark naked, only a letter about his waist, with a fringe about a span long. He had a bow and 2 arrows. He was a tall, straight man, the hair of his head black, long behind, none on his face at all. He told us the place where we now live is called Patuxet, and that about 4 years ago all the inhabitants died of an extraordinary plague, and there is neither man, woman, nor child remaining, as indeed we have found none, so as there is none to hinder our possession, or lay claim to it. All the afternoon we spent in communication with him.
I'm sat in the square outside the Science Building after having the most delicious vegan BLT and a ginger soda. I've just eaten a carrot muffin and now have a coffee. The square is full of families playing outdoor games, splashing in the water feature, which is a spiral of boulders with water fountains in the centre, sending up a fine spray about 2 foot into the air. The kids hop from boulder to boulder and stick their feet in the spray. There's food vans and ice cream trucks and even a petting zoo. This is very unlike British university campuses that I have seen. The uni and museums and attractions are all together and accessible to everyone and not just the students. I have an afternoon appointment in the fine art department, who have some wampum on loan from the Peabody. I had a nice time this afternoon exploring the Fine Art Museum. Amazing range of work on view. It was so good. I found some Hakasai, some Degas, some Picasso, and some exhibits from the Bauhaus period, and my favourite, the Russian constructivists. I spent some money on gifts to take home, a mobile, a bookmark, and a little something for Molly made from glass. Hopefully I will get it home safely. For myself, I purchased a beaded choker made from turquoise beads made by the Navajos. I saw this amazing grass growing in someone's garden in Cambridge. A little was overhanging the sidewalk, so I took just one little seed head. I'm going to try and find out what it is, and if it's not an invasive species, I might try and grow some at home. The crisscross overlapping pattern of the seed head is very much like the quill work that I viewed today in the handling room. The porcupine quills on the quill work are cut, dyed and flattened and then woven in a zigzag manner. On Saturday the 17th of March 1621, William Bradford notes in his diary that Samoset returns.
He brought along with him 5 other tall proper men. They had every man a deer skin on him, and the principal of them had a wild cat skin, or such like, on the one arm. They had most of them long hosen up to their groins, close made, and above their groins to their waist another leather. They are of complexion like our English gipsies, no hair or very little on their faces, on their heads long hair to their shoulders, only cut before, some trussed up before with a feather, broadside like a fan, another a fox-tail hanging out. We gave them entertainment as we thought was fitting them. They did eat liberally of our English victuals. Some of them had their faces painted black, from the forehead to the chin, 4 or 5 fingers broad, others after fashions as they liked.
There was another museum on campus that had on show artefacts from digs and excavations in Egypt and the Middle East by the Harvard professors in the 19th century. It's such a great resource for students to have access to all of this when they're studying these areas of history, to have a dedicated museum and an archive from past professors. I've so enjoyed today, helped by the fact that I felt really awake and refreshed. I dropped off my things and a quick chat online with my friends and a fellow artist back home, Dawn Turner, about some of the glass flowers I'd seen today. She'd heard about the maker, as she herself is a glass artist. I'm off to the Veggie Palace for dinner. Thought I'd try a national dish, so to speak, today, when in Rome. I ordered a vegan mac and cheese, which was so huge I could only eat half. The waiter offered a takeaway box, so lunch sorted for tomorrow. For pudding, even though full, I thought I'd try another dish the Americans are very well known for, key lime pie. A biscuit crumb base, a light pale green lime custard, topped off with a swirl of cream. It wasn't as nice as their cheesecake, but it does taste very nice and is very refreshing. Saturday the 10th of August. Today did not quite go to plan. I sat in the kitchen painting last night until about 8:30 and then did some packing. Bed by 10 p.m, thinking I would be up at a reasonable time and maybe do some sightseeing around the Boston Harbour. For some reason my phone, which is always set on a do not disturb setting in the evening, started pinging with a message from Uncle Mick at 4:30 in the morning. That was it. I was wide awake. However, I did have a lovely chat with Mick. And then my husband Adam was home from work, so I had a phone call with him too. Then after washing, dressing and doing a final pack, I had a nice chat with Dawn and another friend, Tom. Tom had no idea where I was and why I was in America. That's the result of new fatherhood for you. By 7:30 a.m, I was washed, dressed and completely packed, but very tired. So I thought I'd have a little nap and then leave about 8:30 for a day of activities. 10:30 a.m. I awoke feeling very groggy and headed out. I navigated the 3 different T lines to get from Cambridge to Long Wharf at the aquarium and got to the dock at 11:30 a.m. I've eaten my lunch of yesterday's leftover mac and cheese and a sliced apple. I didn't really feel like doing much and had a suitcase in tow, so I've wandered around, sat for a bit, and finally settled at the dockside bar I passed almost an hour ago. Decided to sip a nice cool drink, relax, and wait for the ferry on the dock with not far to pull the heavy suitcase. I've ordered a cucumber cocktail, which consists of cucumber vodka with a cucumber liqueur over ice. Very cool and refreshing, albeit very strong. I asked for a packet of crisps, and I got a blank face. I remembered they call them chips. It's very strange to get used to. In the end, I asked, "Do you have potato chips?" And I got a bag of kettle chips. Score! A nice bag of ready salted. Next stop, Provincetown. Back to the Mayflower in 1620, and to William and Mary Brewster, who were a devoted couple. This next song, "You'll Be There," is written and performed by Wyn and Ella Pritchard of Highcliffe Music. It is William's dedication to Mary for the love and support she gives him on his life's journey.
In the morning as the sun was rising, in a clear and cloudless sky, in the early morn as day was dawning, you were still there by my side, with your warm and gentle body, full of love and tender care. In the morning of my days I know that you will be there. Now at noon the midday sun is shining on this bright and breezy day. Up above our ship the birds are flying as we go our distant way, with your face that shines so brightly and the sunlight in your hair. In the middays of my life I know that you will be there. When the sun is falling at the closing of the day, as the darkness falls we will be sailing to a land so far away, with our hopes and our dreams and a love oh so rare. In the evening of my days I know that you will be there. When the evening turns into the night I know you'll be there.
I would like to welcome my very special guest, Meredith Vasta, all the way from Harvard University in America. Welcome to the podcast, Meredith.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So could you introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your role as a collection steward?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I am a collection steward at the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology at Harvard University. I've been in that position now for about 5 years, and before that I worked at a tribal museum in Connecticut. I went to graduate school and I studied archaeology, but midway through that program I started working at a museum, and I found that I loved it and I wanted to make it a career. I really enjoyed collections management and caring for collections. A lot of my job focuses on making collections accessible to students, Indigenous community members, and also researchers like you.
Mm.
So every week I have different researchers and I get to learn about their projects. And inevitably, I learn something new every single day, and I love it.
Oh, it sounds such a rewarding position to have, and it sounds amazing to be able to delve into all these artifacts and bring their stories out for people to enjoy and re-engage with.
It really is. It's amazing.
So one of the things that I was fascinated with is textures that you can create on the surface of items. And for myself, I use textures to create interesting patterns on a sculpture. But for when I was doing my research, when I visited you, I was really interested in the textures that could be created, and I came across wampum. So could you give the listeners a little bit about, what is wampum, and what's its uses?
Wampum, it's beads made of quahog and whelk shells. They've been shaped and drilled into this small cylindrical bead. There's a really long history of shell bead use in Eastern North America, but cylindrical tubular beads really emerged in the 16th century. So these beads were traded and gifted widely across Eastern North America between indigenous peoples, but also between indigenous people and non-native settlers. In most contexts, wampum has a ritual and ceremonial use, both privately and in a public context. It's interesting, post-contact in the 17th century and into the 18th century, it had been monetized by the settlers. In fact, early Harvard accepted wampum as currency to pay your tuition bill. They
Oh.
don't anymore, though. But for Native people, I can't stress enough that wampum is far more than money. Wampum making and use continues to this day. And for many Eastern tribes, it is still a culturally important part of their lives, and it's definitely part of 21st century traditions.
One of the things that just blew me away that I saw in the museum was the use of the small beads in the creation of the wampum belts. So would they have been made for a very specific purpose?
Individual wampum beads were sometimes strung and then used or gifted as a group of strands. And like you saw, sometimes they were loom woven into belts. These belts or strands could communicate and convey information like about an upcoming gathering, offering condolence, treaties, agreements, alliances, or even a record of an event. The interesting thing is there's many belts in the UK and in European collections that played a role in treaty signings and diplomatic relationships. An exchange between people and gifting wampum belts and strings, it really comes with some responsibility, and it often speaks to a relationship between those two parties.
I was blown away by the intricate details, and I think I was so honoured that I had the chance to go into the archives with you and don the special lab coat and get right up close to these pieces, so close that I could sit and count the individual beads and look at the cords, the way they've been twisted or knotted together to hold them. And that was just an amazing experience for me to be able to just sit amongst these artifacts and sketch them. So is that something that you get a lot of people requesting to do?
We do get a lot of requests. We probably get 200 to 300 research requests to come and view and study different parts of our collection. With the wampum belts and other examples of wampum, I think because of their cultural and historical importance, we do get a lot of researchers to visit those items, both Indigenous community members and non-Indigenous people. We had There's an Abenaki scholar. She's at University of Pennsylvania. Her name is Marge Bruchac. And she has a really interesting blog reflecting her ongoing research on wampum. It's called On the Wampum Trail, if folks are interested in learning more about wampum collections really around the world and what contemporary research looks like on that topic.
I saw some these amazing leg covers in the museum, and they were decorated with these really fine beads of red and white and yellow and blue. Is this something that Bradford was describing? And my other question would be: is are the colours, do they carry very, specific meanings? Or are they symbolic of something?
Yeah, I remember the leggings that you saw. They were on exhibit in one of our first floor exhibits, and they are definitely sort of similar. The ones you saw were made 200 years after Bradford's arrival, and those are from the Northern Plains. Eastern woodlands leggings would have had little to no fringe. They probably would have been made of deer skin and decorated with pigments, perhaps dyed porcupine quill work, and they may have had some very early trade glass beads as decoration as well.
Right.
It's interesting about colors. I do get that question often. And certainly colors, whether it's beads or porcupine quill work or other pigments, they can absolutely have broader meanings, like concepts like war, peace, life, death, and the cardinal directions. But those often vary by tribe and by region. And colors can also have very specific meanings to different tribes, clans, or even personal meaning. So,
Mm.
absolutely, colors can carry specific meaning, but there is no standardized universal language across Native America.
It amazes me that there's just so much inspiration out there. Speaking as an artist, going to have a look at something, and then the feelings that it brings up, or the inspiration, or the ideas, or it really sort of helps to direct. Because particularly for myself, when I start a project, I try not to think of what the end result will be, because I find that if you think too hard about what that end result will be, you're just too focused on making that. And I like to try and become a sponge and just soak up lots of things and lots of experiences, go see different things, read things, touch things, which I'm renowned for getting told off for touching stuff. I'd like to thank you in advance for sharing with me some very special images, which will be going on a Facebook album. So hopefully people can have a listen to this. And if they're as intrigued as I am, they can go and have a look at those pictures. But I understand that they can search on your website as well.
Absolutely. The majority of our collection, over 1 million items, are available on our website, the Harvard Peabody Museum.
Well, that's really good. So they can just go in and browse and have a look at some of the different things. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Meredith, for being my special guest. It's just brought back that that experience all over again, and that enjoyment of discovering a different culture and just getting to know different parts of the world. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure, and it was wonderful working with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to join me for the next episode where I land in Provincetown. Spirit of Mayflower is part of a series celebrating my Spirit of Mayflower project. You can get involved in lots of ways. You can take a look at some of the movies and pictures I took on my journey by heading to the Rachel Carter Sculpture Facebook page. You can also head to my website at www.rachelcarter.co.uk, and there you'll be able to view some of the sculptures I make, treat yourself to a limited edition Pilgrim woman sculpture, or take a look at some of the online tutorials